I finally finished Dragon Age Inquisition. I obviously gave like my really really early first impressions a couple podcasts ago. Not on any of the ones that are on iTunes. Unfortunately, you have to go to my YouTube channel CS Radical to see that because due to my bandwidth constraints, I can't just put up 6 episodes out of nowhere. So, um, but I finally finished. My end game save was 87 hours, and it could have been a lot more if I'd actually had I known that that mission was going to be the last mission. I wouldn't have done it at that point. I would have done a little bit more. But as of right now, I finished it at that point and then stopped for a while because I don't. I'll probably end up doing a second playthrough as a male, as probably human, because I played my first round through with this as a female elf archer, just as the archetype as most things. I'll probably end up playing as a male warrior, um, probably human, because as much as I loved Iron Bull in this game, I don't know if I want to play as a Canarian in like it's the same reason. Like a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this, but the reason that I play a lot of my main characters, if I have the choice as a female, is because that's what I enjoy looking at as a straight male. So by having that, it means that there's always something for me to look at and keep invested in. Now it sounds stupid, and I get why it does, but at the same time, like say for example, I play Grand Theft Auto Online for a while, and I originally was a male character, and I try to make it as close to my style as I could. But the more and more I looked at him, I'm thinking, "Holy fuck, this is an ugly dude, Jesus!" And I can't change it now. So I got bored, and I said, why don't I just try making another character? And I made a female version, and saw how that worked, and it looked so much better. And it has nothing to do with that the view's on the ass the whole time. So don't get into that. It's the elegance, it's the idea that is what I'm attracted to. So I mean, it's easy for me to say that I would rather play as a female character just because that's what I would enjoy seeing more often. I associate it as a straight male, but no offense to most straight male characters in gaming, but they're kind of dickish and boring. Whereas, like Mass Effect is that great example where Fem Shep is miles beyond a better personality and a better character and has a much more fleshed out profile by the end of the entire series than the male Shepard, and it's ridiculous how different they are. But anyway, I played as a female elf archer in my first playthrough. There's a lot to talk about with this game. I mean, I guess I'll start with some of the things that I really wish they had done. Obviously, with this being an open world game, it doesn't look as good as it could. Now, I got it on PS4, and I gotta say, it does look very pretty, but I've seen, like, even playing The Witcher 2 on my PC, I've seen better. And I don't know if it's. Well, I guess all things considered, considering Dragon Age 2 reused a lot of the same stuff, I guess I can't complain about it looking. Because it looks great. Inquisition looks amazing. When it wants to, anyway. Most of the environments look really nice from a distance. Some of the stuff up close, it's eh. Like a lot of the character models, like they don't. Like this, especially Skin, I find. The face for Skin looks really good, but everything else just looks like they just got slapped on. A lot of times it's very buggy. Like I see really terrible, like choppy walking from animals, a lot of pop-ins, a lot of stuff suddenly like disappearing for a moment and then popping back. Not even lag; it just literally looks like it disappears. Like I don't feel like there's a slowdown. It just boop, something else shows up. Um, but I mean, otherwise, it looks fine. It all things considered, it looks pretty good. Uh, One of my key things is that when I finished the game, I finished with over 200 power left because there are so many things you can do in the game that, and when you do so, you earn power, and power unlocks mostly story missions or new places to go to on the map, but it's mostly story related stuff that it'll go towards. But the problem is that by the halfway point of the game, unless you literally have done no side questing and you've done the bare minimum to get to the story, by the second half of the game, you don't need to get power anymore because you have all you need. It's weird how you can make so much power and you can keep making it by either doing requisition stuff at any part of the maps. You can even buy, I think you can buy treaties and stuff that counts as power. And you're thinking like you have all this spare power and nothing to do with it. It's strange how they made this game to make it, even if you don't try to do anything out of your way, you can still earn way more than what you need. And it makes you feel like all this stuff that you've done beforehand is pretty much pointless. Because a lot of the side questing is still those pointless, go fetch 10 bear hides kind of thing. And it's, or carry this flower to this grave for me, like you can't fucking walk yourself or take a horse or something like that, Some of it seems so pointless, and then when you realize at the end of the game that it really was because all you got was some armor that you just sold off anyway, it's frustrating. And that's the problem too, is that a lot of the game is that because you feel like you're fighting in these really high dungeons until you realize they're just leveling up the enemies to be around your level. So when you face like 19 level 19 enemies, and then you get a level 11 piece of armor that you could have used 20 hours ago, but you're level 21 right now, and that shit means nothing to you. You spend most of the game probably with maybe five weapons and maybe 3 sets of armor, because you'll get one piece of armor that you'll stick with for 30 hours, and then finally you'll either craft like the best thing you can do, or you'll just suddenly find just a slightly better piece and you'll wear that for a while. Whereas I think Blackwall had the same armor, because I took one piece of armor off Cassandra and gave it to him, and then I think he kept that armor the entire game because I just never got anything better for him. It's strange how that works out, and I think that, again, like with a lot of games that have a lot of loot, you really have to scale them up. Like there has to be some way of scaling up the levels on these armors, because unfortunately, especially if you're like me who likes to complete maps, I'll walk into a map that I should have walked on 5 levels ago, and everything I pick up is just immediately being sold when I get back to the nearest merchant. That's all it is. And people say, well, you shouldn't be grinding so much. I'm like, well, that's not the point. Like, you have to adjust for every player. You can't just say you have to play this one style and then punish anybody else who does something otherwise. Like, I don't know. It didn't work out that way for me, to the point that like it's frustrating that I really couldn't better my characters except by leveling up. Like I couldn't get them better weapons. I couldn't get them better armor. For the most part, by the halfway point of the game, I had the accessories that I wanted to fit with them, so it was fine there too. The only other thing that, well, actually, no, there's 2 other things, but the one thing that a lot of people have been getting mad about is that the war table can be a real pain in the ass in two different ways. One, always having to walk towards it, and usually it means you have to fast travel to the to Skyhold, or in the case, especially in Haven at the beginning, it's a long walk to the war table. At least in Skyhold, it usually gets shortened up. And I mean, fast travel can really help with that as well. But in Haven, holy crap, it's a long-ass walk. The other thing with the war table is some of the missions take way too fucking long to finish. And I'll give you the best example. There was a mission that you thought you were going to be reaching out to the hero of Ferelden, which is the hero that you would have played in the first game. You get to see your hawk if you do it properly. What's the site name? It was I can't remember what the official name of it was, but Dragon Age had a site where you could import, because of Origin, you could import all your settings from Dragon Age 1 and 2, and it would already create the world for you for all the decisions that you made and all that stuff. And I even went back and tinkered with stuff and redid some things that I didn't realize. And there were even stuff that I didn't even realize I missed, so I could actually choose them out and see that affected things. For the most part, I didn't notice it. The only 2 things you notice is, okay, there's your hawk, and then, oh, there's King Alistair and Nora. Okay, so yeah, I remember I did that. For the most part, though, otherwise, like, I didn't notice anything else that really had to pertain to that, other than sometimes Varric would talk about Hawk and Meryl, which Meryl was the romance option I picked for Hawk in that game. Other than that, like, unless you ask them and they openly like talk about it, that's it. You don't really hear much else about any of the decisions you made. So it's not like Mass Effect, where it was pretty obvious over the course of the game, especially by the 3rd game, where all your decisions were going. In Dragon Age Inquisition, I feel like it's barely there, and it was kind of disappointing. But back to the war table, I tried to do the Hero Ferelden thing, and it took, I think, 23 hours to do that mission. And because I thought I was at one of the near end missions of the game, which ended up being the second last, I think. Yeah, I think it was. Because I won't spoil anything, I don't want to say it. But I said, okay, I'm not playing this game then, because I really did all the side questing I needed to as well. Like, all I had left for the most part were dragons and a couple of missions I really didn't care to do. So at that point, I'm like, well, I got nothing else to do. I'll just turn the game off and wait until tomorrow around the same time and then do that. Because I thought it would mean something. And then 23 hours later, all you get is a letter from the hero Pharrellin saying, I wish I could be there, but I'm doing this, this, and this. And I'm thinking, it took 23 hours to do that shit, and yet I can accomplish something pretty dramatic that can open up a piece of the map or open up another part of the mission. Or actually, no, that's kind of true. And open up another piece of the map, like say a bridge is down. And in 45 minutes, that thing's up and I can do some more stuff. Whereas in 23 hours, I got nothing out of it. And I could have finished the game, actually. I could have finished had I known. But, that wasn't there. That option wasn't there for me. But last but not least, the ending, without spoiling anything, obviously, it feels rushed, and it feels like it wasn't as anticlimactic as it could have been, or it didn't feel like the stakes were high. That was the biggest thing. Like, for the entire game, you feel like you are fighting to claw your way out of this just shithole of a world you're in right now. And then at the end, it just feels like, oh, here's the boss. It's disappointing. I thought, we were going to... Again, I don't want to say it, though, because I don't want people to think that some things are for naught. So I won't. But to put it in the most vague way possible, there are some things that you end up doing for the Inquisition that completely end up having no point to it whatsoever. There's no payoff towards it other than maybe helping you with resources or something like that, but like for the most part it means nothing in the end. It's just something to do and something to waste time collecting stuff for. And that kind of annoyed me because I'm like, okay, I made all these changes and none of them actually had... You don't even tell me, like, if they were worth anything. It literally was just like, oh, that was just that thing you did that didn't do much. In terms of the characters, and now that I'm talking off the bad stuff, other than Solus, I liked everyone. Like, including, the non-playables. I loved Josephine. I loved Leliana, who comes back from the first game. Cullen had his own little story going on. Even like some of the side characters, like the bartenders, have a little interesting story to them. The bard, I said it in the podcast when I gave my first impressions about it. The bard has such a beautiful singing voice, so that was awesome. Iron Bull's henchmen are some of my favorites, especially what was it, Krem, I think? Yeah, I think so. And all of them had their own like little nifty bits to them. But in terms of all the characters, like the only one that I really didn't like was Solus because he was just very like preachy and boring. And sometimes Sarah, just because she got to the point of being so random and kind of annoying. Not in the sense of like what we consider like with Japanese like squealy characters like Vanille and Riku. Those don't annoy me, but just the way that she would like consistently have this like high pitched giggle and would just it was kind of odd. It's like when you hear like you have that one friend or that one family member that has that really weird laugh that just kind of makes you go ugh. And Sarah kind of has that laugh where it's just like, okay, yeah, you're kind of funny at times, but stop doing that. Stop it. But otherwise, like everybody else was awesome. Iron Bull was tremendously awesome. Dorian is probably one of my favorite male characters, period, and it just makes it even better to me that of course it's a gay guy, which obviously fleshes out that, oh look, the guy with personality is the one that everybody in our real world hates. What a surprise. And even guys like Varric and them, like obviously there's the quick wit and the the comebacks and all that stuff, and even Cassandra, who's meant to be like that hard-headed soldier. She, if you put her and Varric together, or even her and Dorian, like, she is always the one that slams them down for whatever comments they make, and you're just thinking, man, I'm glad I have you here, because with if I put her with, say, like, Iron Bull and Solus, like, she would be boring, but you put them with all the quirky characters, she thrives, and just, it opens up so much more to her, which is just awesome. I think with Vivienne too, like I was okay with her. Like Solus is the only one that I just didn't like at all. Vivienne, I had moments, and then she just turned into that bitch, and it was just like okay. But either way, overall the characters are just awesome. And then finally the gameplay. I never used the tactical view because I didn't like that originally in Dragon Age 1. So I'm more of an action oriented person, so I was happier with that. I thought the AI could have been made a little smarter because the options that you can customize on them really aren't a whole lot and don't really change much. It just means, oh, you'll put a potion on at this point, or you'll attack the people that I attack. But it seems like they just want to do whatever they want to do, and it's almost like they're just rolling dice to see which attack they do. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Whereas I had a system where, as an archer, I would use the long shot first to get that key damage in, put the explosive shot in to knock them down, unless it's like something big that can't be knocked down. But I would do the explosive shot, knock them down, run up to them, and then do my rolling, like I would backflip and throw a bunch of arrows at them for the big critical hits because of my bow having a really high critical hit range. And that was my kind of style, and then if I ever need to use something else, I would do that. But that was my system. There was a rhyme and reason to what I did. Whereas with the AI, it seems like they literally are just on a random number generator, and that number does that attack, you know? But I'm sure that it is very fluent in the way that it runs, and it is very rewarding at times, but at other times it just seems like, oh, you go up, you shoot a couple arrows into a guy, and you move on. So sometimes it doesn't feel like it was that drastic, and there was very little times in the game where you felt like the battle was a key thing. There's one mission especially where there is like a bit of a war going on, and that kind of, it does put up the idea that the stakes are a little bit higher. But most of the game, it's like, oh, it's the 4 of you against 2 guys, or 3 guys, or sometimes 5 guys. But you never really get that scale very often in the game. And considering you're supposed to be the Inquisition, this, crazy, slammed together militia trying to take down all the evils, and for the most part, you never fight alongside them, it's kind of disappointing. And it makes you wish I could have gotten a little bit more out of that. But as I finished that up, did I take less time to do that than Guilty Gear? I think I was just going nuts on Guilty Gear because I love that series. But that is probably one of my favorite games of the year, and I'm torn if that's going to be my game of the year when I do the year-end podcast. I'm torn if that's going to be the game that I say, yep, that was the best one this year. It's definitely up there, and if you have any interest in RPGs, you should. If you haven't already, obviously, I'm sure most people have, because it was at the point that I actually wandered around to all the GameStops in Hamilton, and then ended up going to a Best Buy and finally getting a copy because all the GameStops had sold out. All of them. Except for the ones like downtown, which I can't stand going to because I hate driving downtown. But any place that I could get to in a reasonable distance, they were all sold out. And this would have been just a couple days after it was out, and it was still sold out, so that's kind of crazy. But it is definitely a game worth your time. Unless you were just the anti-RPG person, this is a game to pick up. And especially if you have a new console, like a PS4 or an Xbox One, this is a game for you to be playing because it's definitely one of the best ones on the new consoles now.